and thank you for your patience. And, well, we're having special guest Johnny Olden Jr. on. We were going to go on together on Sunday, but there was just a little bit of miscommunication on my own part. So we're here now, and we're going to talk about Ohio State versus Michigan, some Big Ten win totals as the season is just inching closer and closer, and also because, quite frankly, most Big Ten teams won't even be competing for the Big Ten championship this year. We want to talk about some programs that down the road, a year, maybe two, or even longer, we think with their staffs and potential for recruiting can compete for the Big Ten in the future. How are you doing, Johnny?
I'm doing good, Sam. How you been?
I have been extremely busy, but that's the good thing about transitioning from the preseason to the regular season. Eventually, things are going to be adjusted and more settled in. Yeah. I'm really
I'm
excited for week one, but even before that, for Florida State versus Georgia Tech this Saturday.
exactly. I'm ready for football. I'm tired of talking about the game, and I'm ready to start watching them and analyzing them myself. That's what I'm waiting for.
Yeah, it gets so, I don't even know what the term is, but just it gets tiring talking about teams over and over and over again. I still enjoy it, but at some point it's like I want to see if what I'm thinking pans out or if I'm totally wrong, and then, well, what can I do differently or what can I look at now to get it right?
Exactly. And with other teams have it better than us as far as getting intel out of camp, so they know a little more, see more videos and clips and things like that. You get barely anything out of Michigan, so all you're gonna get is press conference, coach speak, and a few player interviews. But besides that, you pretty much got to wait till the season.
I have a question for you actually as it relates to Michigan media. Not people like you and I who look at things and just diagnose like whatever we can get our hands on, but like the people who are actually like paid in Ann Arbor, like within the umbrella that is the University of Michigan. How honest would you rate them on like a scale of 1 to 10?
Uh, are we talking about in general, or are we talking about like stallions type of stuff?
That can be how about both? You factor in everything and then just in general.
I'd say probably a 6.5, 7. I'd say
Okay. Yeah, if I were to factor in the Stallion stuff, it'd be lower. Same with like
probably.
Jim Harbaugh, like anything to do with coaches.
Yeah.
But they've probably like with the roster, I think, have been pretty, guess, not dead on, but close. Like, I didn't think we would be as good at passing the ball last year as we ended up being. And I think that was something pretty early on from the insiders, was that this team would be better at passing the ball, or they'd at least try to pass the ball more often.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I brought you on to talk about Michigan and Ohio State, so let's dive deep into that. But before we do, I want to give a thanks to Squad Blitz for sponsoring the video and sponsoring the channel. Squad Blitz is college fantasy football. That's what it is, except instead of drafting a player, you got to draft a team. And a team for passing the ball, for running the ball, and for playing defense and special teams. It's enjoyable already because I have Oregon, Miami, Nebraska. I have Kentucky and Iowa, and I think Texas State, Washington, and there's one other team I'm forgetting. But you have to know your stuff nationally if you want to play your cards right in this game, it seems. And you still have the fun unpredictability of college football factored in. Have you heard of Squad Blitz, Johnny?
No, I've never heard of it.
Well, you can get it on the App Store of either Apple or Android, and I'm not even recommending like this part from a paid standpoint. I'm saying I think it'd be cool if I could like try it out with a fellow content creator and a few others, including fans. So if you're interested, feel free to download it. It's all free. But
I'm gonna
for
check
you,
that
the
out.
viewer, and even for Johnny, but just for everyone, I have 9 spots open in my fantasy league. If you just give me your email, I'll send you a link and you can join my league. And the draft, I've scheduled it to be 6 days from now on Tuesday. So that should be plenty of time to get everyone in and pick in their teams. Yeah. So thank you to them for sponsoring this show. And seriously, I mean, when week 1 gets rolling, you'll see that it's going to be fun. And it's in, I would say, it's it's ready to be played, but overall, they're still tweaking things, still updating things. It's only going to get better from here on out. So get on it, be early, be the early bird that catches the worm, and download Squad Blitz today. Yeah.
I
So
like it.
thanks to them again, to Corey, to Josh for reaching out to me. But let's get to Ohio State and Michigan. If you can't already tell, guys, I'm wearing the Ohio State themed college football with Sam t-shirt. If you want one of those or the Michigan themed one or any of the Big Ten school themes, you can check out my merchandise store via the link in the description. But I'm wearing that because Johnny and I are both Michigan fans and diehard Michigan fans. So
Yes,
I
sir.
think it's only fair to play a little bit of devil's advocate. I'm going to try to do my best, even like with my praises and criticisms of Ohio State that are already built in. So to kick it off, Michigan versus Ohio State's in Columbus, obviously. It's a noon kickoff, and the spread already, even given that Michigan's won 3 in a row and still returns some pretty substantial production on defense and great players, they're nearly a double-digit underdog,
Hmm.
just over a touchdown underdog. What's your early read of this game, just like in a few sentences? What do you think?
Um, I'd say maybe I think overconfidence on the Ohio State side. I'd say overconfidence because nothing's happened yet. So right now you have overconfidence for Vegas. They see the Vegas odds, which they're just odds right now. So if Michigan was to smack Texas, that odds gonna change. You
That's
know.
true.
So right now, it's a lot of this stuff means nothing until we see these teams play. We see Will Howard, how he looks, you know, things like that. We see if Michigan's O line, the new O line, how does it look? How does the new quarterback, whoever the starter is, whether it's Orgy, Davis Warren, how do they look? So to me, it's still a question mark. But right now Ohio State is feeling themselves, but still have to prove it on the field.
To a certain degree, yes, but couldn't it also just be like expectation? Because Michigan returns 5 starters, Ohio State returns 15, like triple the amount of starters, almost double the production. It's at home. They there's a new coach in town with Michigan. Like if I were an Ohio State fan, I would think, I mean, you have to win this. Not have to keep job security, because firing anyone who goes 11-1 is ridiculous. But like you got to get it. You have to beat a team who, by talent and roster and returning production and basically every number that matters in the books, again, like you said, from preseason, but every number that matters, you should win. And actually, Ohio State's, it's not almost a double digit favorite. They are a 10-point favorite. The
Yeah,
line's
yeah, they
updated.
are.
They're straight up a 10-point favorite. It's the largest spread in favor of one team since 2019 or 2020, when the lines were
Mhm.
out on that game. It's 10-point spread in this game between two preseason top 10 teams, and Michigan's still in the top 10 by most power ratings. That's big.
Yeah, I mean it is big, and I understand the all they've lost, the all that. If you don't know what Michigan is bringing back and all the players that played last year, then you would say, "Oh yeah, they're going to get smoked." But those of us that are in the know, we know Hausman played a lot. We know we got Barham from Maryland, who's a heat-seeking missile. We know Quinn Johnson came back, who's played and been in the rotation at safety for years. We know we got Jaden Mangum from Michigan State. We know we got Wesley Walker from Tennessee. These dudes are studs to be in the rotation. We know we still got Will Johnson. We know we still got Kenneth Grant. We know we still got Mason Graham, Josiah Stewart,
Yeah.
Colston Loveland. So I'm naming all these dudes because I know what they can do. I don't have to think about it. You get what I'm saying? So if
Yeah.
you don't know, then it's just okay. They lost all these guys to the NFL. Harbaugh's gone. But and this is my thing. Michigan, Michigan, Michigan got rid of, well, Jim Harbaugh left. You bring in Sharon Moore, and I've seen people saying, why, why did they hire Sharon Moore? And this is what a lot of people don't seem to understand about Michigan. Michigan doesn't run itself like other universities. So you have to understand how you have to deal with the administration at Michigan. That's one, because they don't work like everybody else. Two, you two, you have to understand what it was like after Rich Rod. Well, after Lloyd Carr, to Rich Rod, to Brady Hoke, and then Harbaugh. You have to understand all those bad years. Sharon Moore saw it when it was bad under Harbaugh before he changed it. So me saying that is because he knows what worked and what works at Michigan. He still has that. So he was mentored by Harbaugh to take this job, you know. So
Yes.
anybody that you listen to that's been on campus, has been at practice, they say everything seems pretty much the same. They might play a little more music at practice, but everything seems the same. You have the understudy for the strength and conditioning coach. You have Wink Martindale coming in with the, I guess you could say, what is he, the godfather of the system that Jesse Minter and Mike McDonald were running.
Yeah, it's running the
So
same thing.
exactly. So it seems like, oh, they're going to be garbage or something. But if you really do the homework, it's like, I don't know about that just yet. If you watch somebody like Joel Klatt, he's in the know on what's, he's been into Michigan. So he's like, I don't know, y'all. So that's what I try to tell people. Okay. You thinking Michigan's just going to be garbage, you're going to be in for a surprise.
Yeah, thinking that Michigan is just going to lay down and die, I think it's the same thing in my mind with Alabama. It's wishful thinking. You don't want it, because if you're not a part of the fan base, it indeed is annoying. Like any team that year over year over year is doing something similar and they're dominating at the top, the teams they crowd out, it's it's not fun. And I get that. But
Definitely not.
yeah, but that's for the crowd that says Michigan's just going like 6-6 or 7-5. For
Yeah,
anyone who
yeah.
says they'll go, I mean, 8-4, I guess I can see if I'm wrong about being high on them, or nine and
That could
three,
happen
like
with this
that
schedule.
range.
It's possible. It's
Yeah,
definitely possible.
for that range and up, it's a question of, yeah, the spread is big. The because I really want to keep it at this Ohio State angle, but
Mm-hmm.
also the fact that in this game, Ohio State has clearly and consciously, they've like a slinky. The matchup advantage used to be like all the way out here,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the toy from Toy Story, which just like tore out all the way, and Michigan was way
yeah.
over here because their trenches are better. And now it's kind of been compressed. And I think the reason Michigan won last year is because it wasn't just the fact that they were like elite in the trenches, but they had a better tight end, they had a better quarterback, they were better at every position except for wide receiver. That was the only position, and maybe safety, that like when healthy, that Ohio State was better at last year. That was it. And Michigan was deeper on top of that too. And they had home field advantage. But this year it's different.
It's a flip. It's flipped a little bit.
Exactly. Ohio State theoretically, and I think in actuality too, they have the better depth. They have the more experience. I don't think that Ohio State will have a better offensive line, but they could. I wouldn't have said that last year. And they could be better. They could be better everywhere on defense by a slight margin. And I look at that matchup, and also the fact that Ohio State, I think, will likely have a loss entering this game, because at Penn State and at Oregon is going to be tougher than some people think. I mean, Penn State is built with their pass rush to make Ohio State's offense uncomfortable, and Oregon will find ways to score. Like, those are going to be two close games.
I'd say Oregon. I don't see Penn. I got to see Penn State beat them. I can't put the faith in them to do it.
Yeah, I've shifted chips into the middle of the table by picking them to outright win that game. So I won't necessarily like get really passionate about debating that, because I can see Ohio State game controlling that team to death too.
It's mostly James Franklin. He gets out coached.
Yeah, I don't know what he was doing last year against Ohio State. I mean, he was eating glue, having Drew Aller pass for like over 40 times and then only running it for 20 times. It's like, what are you doing?
He does this. That's like, he just finds a way to lose it.
He's 3-22 in top 10 games.
Jesus, that's a lot.
Yeah. And his only two in the regular season were in 2016, when I was 14 years old and couldn't grow facial hair. He hasn't won a regular season top 10 games since.
Jeez.
I think he breaks it, though, this year. But if I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost now or never for him. It's getting close to that. But like with Ohio State, the question, the big thing about Ohio State, and this is the problem that they have to face right now. They're in a little. They're similar to Michigan was before 2020. You didn't have anybody on the team that beat Michigan. I mean, that beat Ohio State. They're in that boat right now. Nobody knows how it feels.
That's actually, in that instance, you're correct.
Yeah, nobody knows how it feels. So, if Michigan was to get up, how are y'all going to react? How is Ohio State going to react to that? If Ohio State gets up a little bit and Michigan punches them back, how you going to react?
Yeah, especially given the fact that and I know 2022 is like, Michigan's 2022 team, I think, would smoke this Michigan team. And Ohio State's 2022 team is built a little differently than this one. But when Michigan went up on them on the road, like, they completely melted down. And if they just didn't, they may have been able to come back and win, because I think you put them up against that Georgia team pound for pound, they were better built to beat that team than Michigan was. But they lost it. And that was the G. Scott headbutt, and then the confusion about going for it with the fake punt, and
plays like that.
Yeah, that's the epitome
2021.
of
who was that? Denzel Burke with Roman Wilson 2021 in the end zone throwing his helmet or something he did.
Oh, something like that. Yeah, it's the epitome of, we thought we're gonna game control you, but we're not, and it's like someone playing a team in NCAA 14 and they throw a dumb pick and then they throw the controller at the ground and break the controller.
Exactly. It's not going the way you thought it would go. It's not as easy as maybe you thought it would be. And you're in a dog fight. you're about to be in a dogfight. Can you handle it? And Michigan, Jim Harbaugh, and hopefully that continues with Sharon Moore, which it seems like that's what the route he's going is. We don't care about beating you in the first quarter. We don't care about beating you in the second quarter or the third quarter. We trying to get to that fourth quarter because we're gonna make you quit. So if you're not ready to go 4 quarters, you might as well give up because we're gonna make you give up about halfway through that fourth quarter. You can hang
Yeah.
around a little bit, but fourth quarter, it's time to say goodbye. It's over for you.
Yep. Yeah, I mean that's when it matters is the second half. And Michigan was so good last year in the first half that you didn't see that too often because they would just get up on you early and sit on it. But you saw that
Exactly.
against Ohio State and against Washington and Bama, the good teams they played.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think we've set the mood for this game up pretty well. Ohio State needs the win. There may be some arrogance, but also I think more importantly, it's a rightful expectation.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I said in the 2022 preseason, I thought to myself like Ohio State needs to win at home because I don't think that in 2023, and this is well before 2022 was over, I thought to myself, I don't think they're going to beat Michigan in 23, like based off of what Michigan did in 21 and how the team was like had guys who could return and were relatively young. Ohio State needs the win because I mean, for two programs that have stadiums with 100,000 capacity and can get loud at any moment, this game being played in Columbus versus in Ann Arbor could be a legitimate like double-digit point swing. That's how big it is. And on top of that, for Ohio State, a lot of people came back from last year. So they're going to
Yeah.
lose a lot of people after this year. I think they'll still be elite, but it's like with Michigan last year in a way where you got to improve over the previous year. Otherwise, why do you come back? Um,
Exactly.
but I want to go through some matchups because matchups make the game. Same with being, the better team, home field advantage. We know home field goes to Ohio State, but I'm going to go through a bunch of position groups and I think critical matchups and get your opinion on this.
Okay.
Who do you think is the better head coach? Like by the time the game, yeah,
Whew, you came with one right there.
yep,
As much as I don't want to say this, I'll have to give it to Ryan Day just off experience. I would have to,
yeah. That's
even
very
though Sharon beat him. I got to give it to him. He's been around and he's won a lot of games. So
yeah. I mean, I think Sharon Moore, and I don't know if I'll have the time to release my Big Ten coaching rankings or not. I have him much higher than probably anyone has him. But I think Day is an elite head coach. I do. And I don't even need to wear this and pretend I'm an Ohio State fan to say that. He is an elite head coach. He's a field goal away from winning it all in one of the most well managed games that I've watched, given that Georgia was that much better than everyone that year and was more physical than Ohio State. And Ohio State nearly blew them out. I look at how he's done a better job against Penn State than Urban did. He's done a better job at Ohio State than Urban has. I think that a lot of Urban's teams post 2014 don't beat the Michigan teams of the previous 3 seasons. I don't think so because
probably
Michigan
not.
teams outside of 16 before the 2021 team were lacking in many key ways. I mean, like, congratulations that you beat Tim Drevno in 17. Like, is that really something to, like, hang a trophy for? Like, no. Outside of the rivalry picture, I don't think so. But I have to easily give it to Day. Moore could beat Day again this season, and unless Michigan wins it all again, I'd rank Day still ahead of Moore entering next year. He has things to build on. What
Yeah,
about
more, more, more. He's got a long way to go, but he showed in those big games that we had. He showed that he's no slouch.
yeah,
He just needs more games to so it can be valid.
Yes, exactly. What about game day coaching? This is James Franklin's, just don't even talk about it. And then strength and conditioning. What about those factors?
Uh, Game day coaching. I'm. I almost want to give it to Moore even with this because what I've seen Moore doing these games, and the fact that he's not like in Ohio State, Michigan, Ryan Day gets tight. He gets tight. We all know that at this point, So he gets a little tight, and he'll get kind of pass happy. He'll be scared to go for it on fourth. They haven't tried a trick play in since I don't know when in the game, and Sharon's not afraid to do it. I'm going to give it to Ryan Day just off the experience factor, but if I see more of what I saw from him last year, I'm gonna give it to him after that. But and what was the other one?
Conditioning, strength and conditioning.
I'm giving that to Michigan. Michigan strength and conditioning is elite, and even losing Ben Herbert, you got his protege. I'm giving it to Michigan because Michigan's mindset is we're going to make you play 4 quarters. You got to bring your hard hat, and we're ready to go all four and overtime if it takes that. We're ready to do it.
Yeah, no, I agree there. I'll offer a little bit of extra pushback on the game management stuff because I think Day actually played a really good game against Michigan. He just didn't have the same amount of cards because his team was they were just limited. They didn't have Stroud, and that's about it, but that's important when you're playing the nation's #1 defense and you're on the road. Like I
That's when you need like a trick play or something.
that's a fair point though that you brought up is they don't that is something I'll give the fans that talk about Urban being better is Urban would be willing to just say like, okay, screw it. We need a change. Like we need a pivot point. I haven't exactly seen the confidence of like Day to do that. But I think last year it was more about the roster and about the assistant coaches than I think it was about his management. And I'll just leave it at that. For conditioning, I'm in lockstep with you. I need to see Ohio State beat people by, like, not just beat them in a close game, but by pounding them to death.
Yeah.
Like, to not use their receivers to, like, finesse their way against Penn State. I need to see, like, what I saw against Notre Dame, but winning by, like, double digits or, like, game controlling from start to finish. More of what they did in the third quarter against Michigan, like, by running the ball. More of those drives.
Had me nervous. They had me nervous for a minute when they did that.
Oh, yeah.
I think we all got nervous a little bit.
Yeah. I felt like maybe the game could totally shift then, but it couldn't be sustained.
Yeah. After that drive, the run game, the water got cut off, I like to say.
Yep. Okay. Offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. I'll go first on this one.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have to give it to Ohio State with both. Defensive coordinator's closer than offensive coordinator. I just think that the job Jim Knowles did last season with, manning the nation's second best defense, I think that shows that he's an elite defensive coordinator. He's not Phil Parker, but I don't think anyone's Phil Parker at this point. Wink Martindale, I think, is a top 15 DC. Only reason I didn't make him top 10 or top 5 is his defense is from an just NFL standpoint. And I don't watch much of the NFL, so I'm not an expert here, but they regressed, and he was not. He wasn't an elite DC his whole tenure, and he's blitz happy, and blitz happy with Michigan just does not. It doesn't always sit well with me.
It's nightmares.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm not sure. Well, I will give you Jim Knowles. Yeah, Wink still has to prove it. He has to prove it. I got to see. Yeah, you come from the NFL, but this isn't. Of course, college isn't the NFL, but you still got to prove it. The game might be too different for you. So I believe that he'll be good, but I'll have to give it to Jim Knowles because he's proved it over last year. Second ranked defense, he proved it. So
Yeah. And I think it's the same thing at offensive coordinator. Kirk Campbell's been promoted to the full-time play caller for the first time here. And Chip Kelly, while I think Kelly has some questions given last year's UCLA offense, he's coached enough offenses to where, especially now that he's no longer a CEO, I trust him to man one of the better offenses in all of college football. Yeah, well,
yeah,
it'll be a big year for Campbell, though, because if Michigan's offense is good after all that they lost, that's like a direct credit to him and the assistant coaches, not even to the previous staff.
yeah. So Kirk Campbell, I agree with that too. Chip Kelly's got a long resume. He's been around. Kirk Campbell being promoted from quarterback coach to offensive coordinator. I can't say he's better than Chip Kelly yet, but the thing that I like is he's got Sharon Moore, because Sharon Moore, the things that he was doing in crucial situations last year was a thing of beauty. So them making a game plan together, it'll be nice to see, but I can't say that he's better than Chip right now.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's perfectly logical, and I think the objective answer. What about the offensive roster for each position? Quarterback, running back, center, guard, tackle, tight end, and receiver. Hit me with your thoughts on those.
If I'm gonna be honest, if I'm just looking at on paper, Ohio State probably has most of those offensive positions. You would say they have the better players besides tight end.
Hmm.
Besides tight end, they got two proven backs. Donovan's proven, but he's coming off a down year. So we know what he can do, but you still got to prove it. You got to put up or shut up. So most positions on offense, I would have to give to Ohio State, honestly. You know, offensive line, they brought back most of their offensive line. Michigan got the transfer from Northwestern, and Miles Hinton came back, which he struggled last year, but it's a new year. But I got to go off what you did last year. So yeah, most of the offense I have to give to Ohio State. Honestly, the problem is they got to go against Michigan's defense.
Yeah. I would give the skill positions to Ohio State, but I can't with the offensive line. I can't do it. They had no business being as bad as they were last year. And I say that with enunciation because Seth McLaughlin is your center. And
I
some will
forgot
say,
about him. I forgot about him.
yeah, yeah,
Shout out to him. He
yep.
got us a Rose Bowl.
Shout out to him and the fact that he cannot stop. I need to get a door. My dog has done this for 2 streams in a row, and it is annoying. I'll have to edit that part out. But anyway, I can't with the offensive line. Like, I agree, but I can't with the
No,
offensive line. There's just with
you make valid points with the offensive line, and plus Sharon Moore. Sharon Moore is, if you want to say Ryan Day's the quarterback guru and Harbaugh was the whatever guru, Sharon Moore is the offensive line guru.
yeah.
So
And it's
I'll
not
give
even
you that.
that. It's the fact that I don't have the exact numbers, but I used to, just because you can't keep everything. Penn State and Michigan over the past 2 cycles, heck, throw in Oregon in here, they have brought in more bodies, but also on average a higher rated player on the offensive line than Ohio State has. Like, as a collective, they've collectively recruited better at depth and quality, quantity and quality compared to Ohio State.
I always say Michigan recruits offensive linemen like Ohio State recruits wide receivers.
Yeah,
So
and it's just, look, if Ohio State gets the right quarterback, what they do everywhere gives them an ability to just outpace teams. And is it possible that Michigan can have a worse offensive line than Ohio State? Yes, because Donovan Jackson's a first-round guard, because Josh Fryer and Josh Simmons got much better as the year went on, and because if Ohio State runs like 55% of the time with McLaughlin, they're limiting his issues because he's a pretty darn good run blocker. I mean, that
Yeah.
Alabama O-line at the end of the year was phenomenal at run blocking. But in pass blocking and also run blocking in the interior, because Donovan Jackson had a down year and Shabola, their projected new guard, has been good in camp. But I guess it's kind of a wait and see. I think they're clearly better at quarterback, running back, wide receiver. Michigan's clearly better at tight end. And perhaps I'm going to go out on a limb and say this, that outside of offensive guard and maybe tackle, but I'd say especially at center, I think Michigan's going to be clearly better than Ohio State. But that's just the offense. What
Yeah,
about...
I think one last point on the offensive line. I think I like to go on the proven, most of their guys that they have, they've proved a little more than the Michigan guys because most of them haven't really done much. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the fact that they're coming back and have another year to get better, same with Preeb and like Hen, but those are the only two guys that you've really seen a lot of snaps from. So, but it wouldn't surprise me if Michigan had a better offensive line at all.
Yeah. Oh, it would surprise me if Ohio State had like I don't think Michigan will have a Joe Moore award caliber O-line, but it would surprise me if Ohio State did. It would. I think what'll be almost more important for them is making sure that they can properly scheme to maximize their O-line's output instead of just relying on the unit by itself. Because
That's a great point. That's a great point because they kind of Ryan Day kind of wants to do things his way. Okay, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to pass. So it seems like they just practice and the coaching is so pass happy that these guys almost couldn't. They just couldn't run block good enough. Really, it seemed like
yeah.
you saw so many 4th and 1s and 3rd and shorts where they're doing like jet sweeps and stuff like that instead of just running straight ahead for a yard.
And it made no sense with the backs that they had. And also that the scary fact that because I watch like every Michigan Ohio State game and every Big Ten game that I can, I'm watching Michigan State's defensive line push their O-line around. But Henderson's so fast and Michigan State's defensive backfield was so terrible that it didn't matter.
Yeah.
But that was just against a bad team. When they played Penn State, granted Henderson was out, or when they played Notre Dame or Michigan, outside of like a drive, they couldn't run consistently.
Yeah.
They couldn't impose their will
push
on those teams. But
exactly.
That's last year. It can be different this year. I want to hearken that point forward. And their O-line this year, I think, will be good, maybe great. It won't be average like last year's will. You think that what do you think about just in general run blocking, pass blocking, run offense, pass offense? Hit me quick. What do you think about those four? Like where would you lean?
Run offense. I'm going to take Michigan because that's what they do. Now I know they got Chip Kelly coming in. They say he wants to be 60-40. I got to see it. I know Michigan's going to run that rock, so I'm going with Michigan for the run. Pass, I'm going to take Ohio State, of course. That's what they're known for.
Yep. Yeah,
they have the receivers to do it, even if Will Howard isn't that good. But he could be.
Yeah, they have the receivers, and he's a good enough quarterback to where I think he won't.
And Ryan Day's pass scheme is pretty good, also.
Yeah, they'll find ways to get guys open. They have the athletes to get open, and Howard's receiving good coaching from Kelly. I think it'll be I think he'll be top 25, which
Hmm.
that with the receivers and the defense they have will be more than good enough. Speaking of the defense, defensive tackle, defensive end, linebacker, corner, and safety. Where would you place these teams against each other?
Um, Defensive line, I'm giving Michigan. I know you could say the depth. I guess you could say I'm still taking Michigan's D line with Mason Graham, between Mason Graham, Grant, Rashawn Benny, Josiah Stewart, and Derek Moore. I'm taking Michigan. I'm taking Michigan's linebackers too. Sonny
Really?
Styles, yeah, I'm taking him.
Why?
Barham's a missile. Barham's a missile. If you go watch his film, sideline to sideline, prototypical linebacker. See, feels the his feel for the game is what you want in a linebacker. That sideline to sideline, knows how to get through the wash, and he's a missile. He's gonna have a big year as long as he stays healthy. And Hausman, the same thing. So with those two, now we'll see behind them, but if we're just going on starters, or are we going with the depth and everything?
Oh, I mean, starters you have to weigh more, but depth's important. It's just like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
if with Michigan with returning Houseman and bringing in Barham. I mean, Ohio State brings back Simon, and they got Sonny Styles, who's built for the position, I think, more than safety, and they got C.J. Hicks. So,
Simon hasn't played that much, has he? Or is that Hicks?
oh no, that's Hicks. Simon's been involved in the rotation. He hasn't really
Okay,
started that much, but he's always been in like every
okay,
game.
okay. Yeah, that's Hicks I'm thinking of then. But Sonny Styles, I gotta see it. I've seen him. He's a freak of nature. He is, but I still have to see how good, how much is he gonna progress at linebacker. I have to see it. I know these two dudes. I know Hausman's a stud, and I know Barham's a stud. Looking at his film, so it could be a homer take, but I'm taking our D line. I'm taking our front seven, Michigan's front seven. Now corners, besides Will Johnson, I got to give it to Ohio State because was it Igbinosa and Denzel Burke? They've been around, and those dudes are
Yeah,
studs.
don't forget
You
about
know,
Jordan Hancock either. Jordan Hancock is like just as good as Burke is, or close.
exactly. So corner, I'll give it to Ohio State. Safety, I guess I got to give it to Ohio State with Caleb Downs and what's the other safety? Lathan Ransom.
Lathan Ransom's back.
Yeah, Lathan Ransom's back. I don't want to give it to him, but I guess
You
I
have to. You have to. I mean, that's outside of receiver. That's the position where they're the furthest ahead. It
I don't
is.
want to give it to him, but I think, and this is just my opinion. Caleb Downs is a stud. Lathan Rantham is good, but Makari's been around. Makari's been around, 2-year starter. Quinn Johnson's been around. Made big plays against Bama, caused the fumble on Milrow, knocked Emeka Ibuka for a loop-de-loop in the game.
Oh
You
yeah.
know,
Yeah. It,
So I've got faith in him because he's been in the rotation for a while, and also we do rotation with the safeties. Wesley Walker and Jaden Mangum are studs. They still have to get our system, which is a complex system, but so I'll give it to him. I'll give it to him. I kind of don't want to, but I'm gonna give it to him.
yeah, you especially with Moore being hurt tragically, Rod Moore. If not for his injury, I would I wouldn't give that much pushback because Moore plus Page and Johnson coming back would be like huge. Michigan, I like even with Downs transferring in, I thought to myself, okay, but we have Keon Sabb and Rod Moore and depth pieces. Even like I thought safety was going to just be this awesome position. I still think it's going to be close to elite, but
Yeah,
those two losses were. I mean, I see it as something that's hard to overcome, which is funny because I think Ohio State's best position on the team is probably corner but Michigan has Will Johnson, so they're closer to Ohio State at corner than I think they are at safety. That's just
You
my
think so?
personal opinion, though. I look at Hancock, I look at Igbinosun and Burke, and then Downs and Ransom, and that's like the country's best secondary
It
by
probably is as a whole.
yeah.
Definitely, probably.
Yeah, their problem
I
is
just
the front.
Yeah, the front is the problem, and that's my thing with Ohio State. And I was getting on somebody on my page, Ohio State fan, like a couple months ago, and the big thing with Ohio State this year, I want to see, can Jack Sawyer, JTT, can they get sacks? Can they get consistent pressure? That's going to be the big thing. Can they force turnovers? Because they would get off the field, but they wouldn't force turnovers really. They weren't high in forcing turnovers. They weren't that high in sacks also. Those are two big things with the defense. You know, I think that's the main difference between Michigan's defense and Ohio State's defense last year. Was Michigan was good at sacks and really good at causing turnovers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Ohio State's was bad at forcing
I know it.
turnovers. They were super conservative.
I know it.
Super conservative. I mean, like statistically, they were outside of the top 100 in turnovers forced, and in sack rate, they were well outside the top 50 until that Missouri game. Like
Exactly.
they and I don't think it's because they lack the talent. I think it was because they went from being way too aggressive for their own good in 22 and then
Mm-hmm.
trying the other extreme and being conservative beyond belief last year. I'm curious to see how Knowles changes that because I think they'll be a little more aggressive and they'll probably be a little bit better at everything except for I got to see run defense only because they lost their both of their linebackers and like Eichenberg and Chambers and that's a big deal.
Yeah,
But
Tommy Two Thumbs.
yeah, as Gus Johnson likes to say, they have they it's interesting. I think Michigan's defense, though, is the inverse of Ohio State's. Their front is going to be their strength, but secondary with the injuries and losses, that's an area that outside of Johnson, I think there should be concern about in the big games. Because
Yeah,
if
you got new pieces.
yeah,
So, Jaden Mangum started last year, was all Big Ten second team, I think. But you still have to get the system. Same with Wesley Walker. So until we see them actually out there being comfortable, making the right checks and calls, because they're going to rotate in, but they have to know what they're doing and be able to make those checks and calls and know and be in the right place.
yeah, yeah. So you think pass defense Ohio State, run defense Michigan, and special
Yeah,
teams Michigan?
yeah.
Okay. Finally, these four I think are pretty important because these are not just like positions. I have a whole chart for this because I think it's helpful for like determining wins and losses and not just looking at like X factor players or talent. O line versus D line, like averaging both D lines and both O lines for the teams, and then pitting them against each other. Which would you rather have, the combo of Ohio State's O line and D line, or the combination of Michigan's?
I'm taking Michigan's. I'm taking Michigan's. The fact that I got Sharon Moore coaching the offensive line, I mean, he's overseeing it. He's not going to let them be. He's not going to let them be a bad offensive line. He's not going to let that happen. And plus, Michigan's offensive line does have to go against Michigan's front seven, which is elite. So I'm taking that. I'm taking that. Like that's a lot to deal with. Just having Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, that's a lot.
Oh yeah, I would take Michigan's too. But don't you think that this is the best chance Ohio State's had since 2019 to control the trenches, especially with Michigan's inexperience on the O line and Ohio State bringing back multiple NFL players on the D line? Like they can finally have their D line versus our O line is in their favor type advantage.
If those dudes, if Jack Sawyer and JTT and if they're just their D line as a whole, if those guys come out like angry and hungry and he kind of lets them loose, yeah, it could. You could be right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm picking Michigan. Their O line, D line, D lines
Yeah,
are
me too.
pretty much equal. I think Michigan's is slightly better, but I will let anyone push me back on that because Ohio State's going to be really good. It's more about the O line. But then again, Ohio State is the closest they've been in years to matching up there. What about two more so passing game matchups? Tight end versus linebacker and wide receiver versus defensive back.
Uh, would I take Michigan or Ohio State?
Yep.
Tight end versus linebacker. I'm taking Michigan because G Scott hasn't proved anything but to be a bonehead, and Michigan is like 3 deep at tight end with freaks of nature. I mean, you got Sonny Styles, but Sonny Styles isn't that good in coverage, really. Not that I've seen, at least, And dealing with Colston Loveland, that's a headache. And they say Klein is faster, more agile, and bigger. It's like, okay, you got 2 real difference makers. So I'm taking Michigan's tight ends against their linebackers. Now, what was the other one?
Wide receiver versus defensive back.
Will Johnson can't cover everybody.
Yep.
So I'm gonna have to take Ohio State. As much as I don't want to, I mean they got Ibuka, you got Jeremiah Smith, and then you got Carnell Tate, and then they're talking about using. Well, I guess this isn't the wide receivers, but just those 3. If Jeremiah Smith is what they talk about, like he's the greatest prospect ever at receiver, it's a headache.
Yep.
So and we're losing Mikey. We lost Josh Wallace. So, we could probably roll coverage over there, but just on a DBs versus wide receivers, looking at it right now, it's not close, honestly.
No, it's not. They both have the better secondary, and Ohio State, yeah, they have the better secondary and wide receiver room than Michigan does, and by a huge margin at receiver and by a pretty good margin at DB. And then finally, X factor players, like the players that have all American potential. Who has more of them?
Whew.
I'm going Buckeyes here.
That's when I think about it, it's a little tougher than I think. Because are we talking about on offense, defense, or as a team?
Everything. Team.
I think that's closer than I think I might take Michigan. I might.
I can see it, but
because okay, I'm just gonna name some players. I could go Will Johnson. I think Barham could possibly be All-American.
I agree with that.
Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, Colston Loveland, and Donovan. Give me Donovan. Yeah, and that's without even – I'm not going to say the offensive line yet. So I'm not going to give anybody on the O-line yet.
That's fair. That may be better than me. I would give some people on the O-line that potential. But
listening to El Hadi, it sounds like El Hadi sounds like he could be All-American, but we got to see.
Yeah, I would say for Michigan, I mean, really what you said, except like if I can go further, like throw in Makari Page, Houseman, the 2 DNs, that makes it 10, and then I'd probably say like Hinton and Crippen, that's 12. That's just
Yeah,
from my angle. For OSU, though, you got Henderson, you have
yeah,
Judkins. That's two at
yeah.
running back.
And I
Donovan.
think one of those are gonna knock you. I think one of them are gonna knock the other one off a little bit.
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't think they're going to win the Heisman, but like All American is an All American caliber, not award.
Okay,
Like the
okay,
country's best players, regardless of whether they kind of take each other out statistically.
okay. I got you.
Yeah. Donovan Edwards at guard, I think's obvious. I think that's three. And then you got to put up Ibuka, Smith, Tate. That's six on offense alone. And then I would say their D tackles, Ty Hamilton and Tyleik Williams. Even though I think their DNs have a little more to show, it's possible, especially with Sawyer. So
Yeah,
that's, that's four on the D line alone, like three at receiver. We're already getting close. And then I'm not even going to do the linebackers. I'm just going to do Caleb Downs. I'm going to do Denzel Burke. And I'm going to do Jordan Hancock. And I mean, heck, because they I mean, Jermaine Matthews Jr., I think, if he was at another school, could contend for that. So I agree with you that it's close, but with
I think the receivers in some of those skill positions, they just got more proven guys. So
yes, yeah, yeah, that's my angle on it, and the fact that like defensively they have a similar level of defense and then offense, mainly because of their skill players. The offense is
mhm.
better for them, and like not just as a cohesive unit on skill players, but like individuals like Smith, who should be really good, and Igbuka, who, if healthy, will be elite.
I got a question real quick.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think Jeremiah Smith? Like, what are your expectations for him this year?
Um, Expectations by definition of him succeeding or failing is a pretty low bar. Just start in all your games and get above 500 yards and make a few good plays, because he's a true freshman. I mean,
Yeah,
if people will come and say, "Oh my gosh, he's such a failure," I'm like, true freshman out of high school, he's playing. I mean, some think that this Ohio State schedule's soft. They could play realistically like 4 or 5 top 10 defenses. That in Iowa, Nebraska, Penn State, and Michigan specifically will have great secondary players, and more than just one of them. In terms of what I think he'll do, I think that he'll be one of the best in the country. Not the best. Not maybe not top 5, but top 10. He'll be a top 10 receiver this year.
really.
That's how I view it. I just it with Ohio State and their receivers, it's like Michigan and the O line. I give pretty hefty benefit of the doubt, and I think it's been earned.
I can believe that. I can rock with that. I'm just interested to see what their run pass ratio actually is, and how they let that play out. And especially when you get up in these big games, because normally Ryan, they like to keep in his starters. Way longer than he probably should. Let these quarterbacks get reps, see a lot of different coverages and things like that. So I'm interested to see how that plays out this year. Does he try to get them out of the game a little earlier?
Yeah, I think especially with the defense and the fact that they'll be more comfortable running the ball, therefore chewing the clock.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that you'll probably see, especially because they're deeper too, you should see more rotation.
Yeah, with the longer season also, because
Yeah.
they're gonna make the playoff. They're gonna make the playoff.
Oh yeah. Their schedule's such that they could be 10-2 and they'd be a lock to make the playoff at 10-2. And
Mm-hmm.
you can't say that for most teams.
No,
My prediction for this game, I would probably put it like anywhere from about a 3-7, maybe 10 at most Ohio State win. What say you?
I'm going with Michigan. I'm at the point now where I got to see them. I got to see Ohio State prove it. Got to see them out execute. Got to see them not get make those big time play calls, make those big time plays. I have to see it now. So I'm going Michigan. I'll say by 4.
Okay. Well, if it's a close game, I would say that's fair. But what, like, if Ohio State is close to Michigan's level in the trenches and tight end and linebacker is important, but it's not as important as trenches, or I would say the fact that Ohio State may have a quite gaping advantage at perimeter play. How do they negate that on the road with a new quarterback and
How
also a
does
new O
Michigan
line?
negate? You said how does Michigan negate that?
Yeah, like how do they overcome that against an Ohio State team that's going to be top 4?
Uh, it just depends. The game the game to me the game plan for Ohio State it doesn't change much because the scheme the thing you want to do against anybody is stop that run game. Stop the run, and now we're going to force Will Howard to be great. He's going to have to show us he's that dude. He's great, and he's going to have to do it seeing these exotic blitzes, these these uh this scheme where we're showing blitz, but you don't know if it's coming or not coming. You're going to have to can you diagnose this complex scheme? We're
Yeah.
gonna make you because it's easy when you can just hand it off. The game is easy, so we're gonna stop that run and make you have to diagnose this defense and try to understand what you're seeing. Nobody's understood it in years as at a quarterback. So that's to me that's how you negate it, and you don't give up the big plays. You make them dink and dunk and slowly move down the field and have to continue to execute. And then when you get in the red zone, we hold you to 3.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think though with Ohio State and just how they're built, even with questions on the O line, now that they have Will Howard, who's shown that he's willing to run, I think that if Michigan wants to win this game, they'll have to be like neutral field, discounting matchups, just power rating. They'll have to, I think, be within like a touchdown or 3, more like 4 or 3 points of Ohio State from like a how would you do against the average top 25 team theme,
Mm-hmm.
because they'll be able to. I mean, they have their jet sweeps. They can QB power. They can run it. They finally have a power back in Quinshawn Judkins, and I mean, look, I'm a Michigan fan. I can go full blown, like even putting on the Michigan fan glasses. Maybe I'm a pessimist. I don't think I am. I have such a hard time seeing it. And this is coming from a
Well,
guy who thinks that Michigan would beat Ohio State neutral field or in Ann Arbor, factoring in matchups. I think they would win there. It's just on the
well,
road. They've
yeah.
they've built themselves to at least go toe to toe with Michigan from a schematic standpoint, and then you factor in what they've brought back. And I think Day's an elite head coach. Like if I thought he was the next James Franklin, well then yeah, he's not winning this game, but I don't think that's the case.
Well, I'm more one. I have to see what they're doing. Like right now, it's just predictions. We haven't seen anybody play a game.
It's
You know what
true.
I'm saying? So that's part of it. But I have to see them execute. I have to see Ryan Day or Chip Kelly make these big time play calls. On paper, it's just like, okay, they're gonna win. But the game isn't played on paper. You get what I'm saying? So I have to
Exactly.
see them actually make these plays in this big game because Michigan's scheme is Michigan's scheme. Michigan has the players to slow them down. The scheme is the scheme. as long as we don't have injuries, of course. They have the players to slow them down. Like, if you want to run Judkins, you still got to deal with Mason Graham. You still got to deal with Kenneth Grant and Josiah Stewart. What's his name? Barham's a missile. Hausman. Like, Michigan has the players on defense to slow them down. The question mark is what is that quarterback? What is Michigan's quarterback going to be able to do? I trust Donovan Edwards in the offensive line will be able to move the ball in Khalil Mullins. The question is, what's the quarterback? So that's the real question. I got faith that Orgy can do something, and he's going to be a nightmare to deal with. But can he consistently throw down the field without turning it over? Also,
Yeah, no, that's totally not just fair, but I think that's spot on. I think that you look at the question mark at quarterback, like you mentioned, but also the fact that you have to see what Chip Kelly can do and what Ryan Day can do. And I'll tell you what, the final thing I'll say on this topic before we move on to Big Ten win totals is the fact that, look, I mean, based off of what Chip Kelly has done a little bit at UCLA and what Ohio State has at O-line and quarterback, some of the concerns that I have, I mean, I think that as for the whole natty or bust theme that people keep putting Ohio State in, it's I think this is Georgia's year to, like, this is their title to lose. I don't see anyone, and I mean this, I don't see anyone beating Georgia on a neutral field. That's probably
really?
the one thing in college football that I have to see to believe is someone who is top 5 or top 6 being able to beat Georgia on, like, a neutral field or in Athens, because that, out of anything, that I can absolutely not see happening. But we've talked about the game now for over an hour, which is glorious, but it's time to move on to some things just very briefly before we get off here. I'll just
Yes,
quickly
sir.
ignore this. I didn't set this up exactly properly. But let's talk about Big Ten win totals. I'm going to go through the teams that in the Big Ten I've power rated in a certain order. I'm going to start at the bottom and go to the top and give you the win total. And you can just tell me over, under, and then at the end we can give some brief thoughts and then get on going.
Okay.
All right, so at 18th in power ratings, from my power ratings, I have Northwestern. Their win total per Vegas is 4.5. Over or under?
Sheesh. I'm gonna go over. I'm gonna go over that 4.5.
I like it, except for the fact that I'm going under. Okay, 17th, we got UCLA, also at 4.5.
I'm gonna say under.
Same here, that their schedule's brutal. I mean, LSU in
Mhm.
non-conference, and then road trip to Penn State, playing Oregon, other stuff. It's going to be hard.
Jeez.
Yeah. Okay, 16th, Indiana, win total of 5.5.
I'm gonna say under.
I'm going to say over, but I agreed with you about a month or two ago. So maybe I just avoid that one. 15th, we got Maryland at 6.5.
Mm, I'm gonna say under. I'm gonna say under. You losing Tua, baby Tua. He's what has he been there like 5 years or something?
Yeah, 21, 2, 3. He's been there for 4 years. And and they're an offensive team. I like their defense more than maybe some realize, but
Yeah,
I'm going under right now.
yeah.
Purdue I have at 14th. Their win total's 4.5.
Sheesh. I'm gonna go higher for Purdue.
Over. Okay.
Yeah, over.
I'm going under, but by like a half game. I have them going 4-8. Washington at 6.5. I have them rated as the 13th best Big Ten team.
Mm, under. I think they're
Bingo.
gonna be in for a little shock when they get to the Big Ten.
Bingo. They they lost more, way more than TCU did after their 2022 year, and they play in a tougher schedule.
Exactly.
At 12th, I have Illinois with a win total of 5.5.
Yeah, I'm gonna go under. Yeah,
Yeah, I hate to say it because I like Illinois this year.
me
More
too.
so next year. I think next year they'll be a pretty good team, but I'm going to go under. Minnesota also at 5.5. I have them rated 11th.
Yeah, I'm going under. I'm not rowing that boat.
You're not gonna row the boat and
No, I'm not rowing the
and then
boat.
listen to like the announcer like I can't even make the sound, but like they make this weird howl into the microphone whenever they get a big play, like it's
Yeah,
Halloween. You're not buying
that's
that.
weird. Nah, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it.
I'm going a little over. I have them going 6-6. If it was 6.5, I'd probably pick the under.
I can see that.
At Michigan State at 10th, fumbling over my words here, over under a 4.5.
I'm gonna give them an over. Yeah, I'm gonna give them an over.
I think that's I think that's pretty wise. If you
Yeah,
believe that Jonathan Smith is a great head coach, which objectively he is, with the staff he's assembled, especially, they're going to win more than 4.5 games.
yeah.
Yeah, I have them over too. Power rated at 9th, I have the USC Trojans, win total of 7.5.
Whew, just 7.5.
Yeah,
I mean, I know they lost Caleb and that defense has been garbage, but they got our defensive scheme now. So they got a coordinator who runs the same scheme.
yeah, they should
I'm gonna
improve.
go. They should, but it's the first year, so if you don't got the dogs like we had with Aiden and Ojabo, it's gonna hurt you a little bit. Yeah, I'm gonna go under.
Same here. I've gone on record for producing the bold prediction that they'll have a losing season, which I don't like because I don't have a read on that team at all. But I'm going to go under just
Yeah.
because gauntlet of a schedule. The defense should improve by a good chunk, but the offense should also take a sizable step back with, especially what they have in the trenches. Power rated at
Mhm.
8th in the Big Ten, I have Rutgers. I'm very high on them. Their win total is 6.5.
Yeah, I'm going over. They got a little easy schedule this year, don't it?
Yup, they have a wet toilet paper schedule. That's what they have. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
So
I'm I'm going over. At 7th in the Big Ten, I got the Cornhuskers. Their win total is 7.5.
Nebraska. Is that who's the head coach? Is it Matt Rule?
Yup, it's Matthew Rule.
I'm still not bro. I'm still what's the kid they got? What's the freshman quarterback?
Dylan Raiola.
Dylan Raiola. Yeah, I'm not buying that. I'm under. I'm not buying it yet.
Interesting. I'm go big red. I'm going over 7.5.
Really?
We can talk about this though after. We can do that because that's interesting. At 6th power rated in the Big Ten, I have the Wisconsin Badgers. Their win total is 6.5.
I got some faith in Luke Fickle, so I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go over. I'm gonna go over that.
Yep. O line is one of the best in the country, plus a better quarterback. Year 2 in Fickle's system, the same strength and conditioning coach who coached those Cincy teams. I think over's obvious. Well, not quite obvious, but the better option. At 5th
Yeah.
in the Big Ten, I have the Iowa Hawkeyes with a win total of 8.5.
I wanna say over. I just don't know if Cade is gonna be. They say Cade is boo boo.
So if they
That offense.
They won
The
10
offense,
games with like a cheeseburger at quarterback.
they did. So you're right. Oh, you can almost lock them in because that defense is just so well coached and physical.
Yeah. I
So
wish I
yeah,
went
I'm over.
I wish I went back in time because I've never bet yet and I don't want to get necessarily in the habit of. But at one point the win total was 7.5. And I thought to myself,
Really?
like, oh yeah. And I'm thinking, in retrospect, that's like a lock. That's probably why they moved it up to 8.5, is because
Hmm.
it like that'll be something that, is more reasonable. I'm going over.
Yeah.
I've gone on record picking Iowa to reach the playoffs because I think they're going to beat everyone but Ohio State.
Oh yeah, I did see that video too.
Yeah. At fourth, I have someone who everyone has top two. I got the Oregon Ducks power rated as low as fourth. Their win total's 10.5.
Mm, trying to think. I'm gonna go under. Yeah, I'm gonna go under. I
This
think
one
they gonna.
was really tough for me. I'm agreeing with you on the under, but like in general, if you decide for whatever reason, viewer, to take betting advice from this, stay away from the 10.5s. Like unless it's Georgia, don't don't do it. Yeah, I have Oregon going 10-2, but I could easily see them beating Michigan or Ohio State. Like it's kind of a coin
Oh
flip
yeah,
in my mind whether they go
and
10-2 or
their
whoever.
travels. The thing that's gonna hurt them, their travel schedule gets real bad coming from that West Coast. They got like a month stretch where it's just crazy travel for them.
Yeah, because they play Michigan and then like 2 weeks later they play Wisconsin in
Yeah.
November.
Yeah.
That's I could see them actually beating Ohio State just like in an upset way and then actually losing to like Michigan and Wisconsin because of like weather and those teams, if their O lines are really good, being able to like hang in there. At
Hmm.
third, power rated, I have Penn State with a win
Oh
total of
wow.
9.5.
I mean, they're consistently winning 10, aren't they?
Yeah, and they don't play Michigan.
Yeah, I'll give them that, but just because of their schedule.
You don't think Garrett Green can beat them? I had to throw that in
Nah, nah.
there. No, no on Neil Brown. Okay. At second power rated in the Big Ten, I have the Michigan Wolverines. Win total of 8.5. It was 9.5, but it moved down.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I'm going over that. I might need to take that bet.
Yeah, I'm going over too. At 9.5, I wouldn't have exactly advised people to like look at that because there is a world where Michigan, loses to Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State. But losing that and an additional game, I feel like Vegas only did that because so many people were betting probably the under
Yeah, yeah,
to like move it accordingly. I think over. Over.
yeah. I'd definitely take the over on that one.
Yeah. And then at first in my power rankings for the Big Ten, we got the Ohio State Buckeyes at 10.5.
Yeah, I'd probably take over on that. What is? Yeah, yeah. I'd take over on it.
Yeah. Same advice with Oregon from my perspective. Like, don't touch it unless you're really confident in that team. But I'm taking the over. I can see a world, actually one quite easily, where they lose 2 games, but I think it's more likely they go 11-1 or 12-0 combined
Yeah,
than 10-2.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
So briefly, what you said about Nebraska and Dylan Raiola, you don't believe in him?
No, I don't. I know Nebraska usually packs a defense, which I'm sure they are this year again, packing a defense.
They
But
are.
offense, I got to see it with Dylan Raiola. I got to see it. I don't buy into freshman QBs like that. Like he really has to be something serious for me to buy into him. Like You rarely see a freshman quarterback come and change something unless they have studs at every other position, where they've got stud receivers or a stud back, stud offensive line. I'm not I'm not sure Nebraska has all the tools to make him be successful. Plus, he's gonna have some growing pains.
Yeah. Their O line is questionable. I'll give you that. But Thomas Fidoni's a good tight end, and Jamal Banks and Jalen Lloyd are pretty good wide receivers. For me, though, it's more about the schedule. Like if they had a Georgia, Florida, or Ohio State schedule, I might stay away from that. But the only team they play that I and everyone is power rated inside the top four is Ohio State. Like they avoid the other three. But I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. I mean,
I still think even playing some of the lower level Big Ten teams, you're gonna have to you still gonna have to prove it being a freshman quarterback.
I
You
get
know,
it.
and if they make him, maybe they make him a game manager. Don't turn it over. But don't sound like that's what you bringing him in to do is be a game manager. It doesn't sound like it. But
Yeah. Um. Yeah. That's really it with the win totals and stuff. I don't have anything else that I really disagree on outside of that. Maybe Minnesota, but I can see them going 5-7 or 4-8.
yeah,
They return a lot though. They're top 20 in returning production, and their O line and running backs are going to move mountains. Yeah. For me, I look at Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, and Penn State, and they make up the obvious tier one. I do think one of them goes under, though. Like whether it's Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, or Michigan. More so Oregon and Ohio State or Michigan. Michigan's hard just because it's 8.5, not 9.5. But Ohio
yeah,
State and Oregon play, I mean, two teams. For Ohio State, it's three that I have nationally power rated like top eight. So I think one of those four teams is having a disappointing year by their standards. And then I'd say Iowa and Rutgers are locks to be over. And
yeah.
then USC, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Minnesota, and Illinois, it's kind of like the extremes. Like they could be good or they could be bad. Do you think there's a team I'm missing that could be good or bad, like in that range?
No, I think you got it about right with those teams because it's kind of a wait and see. Like, and then some of these games are going to be come down to a fluke play or a bad call and things like that. So I think it's about right. I think you got them right.
Okay, awesome. Well, after that, we are going to go back over here. And yeah, make sure to like and subscribe, everyone, and share it around and click the notification bell. And also check out Johnny Olden Jr.'s channel. He often goes live wherever it is to talk about Michigan football. So check out his channel. It'd be very good to do that. Let's talk about some future Big Ten contenders just to give this video a nice close. Do you think
Okay.
Michigan State in the next few seasons can contend with Jonathan Smith and their staff and the way that they're recruiting or can recruit?
I think it's going to be hard for them. Like the Big Ten right now with Michigan, with Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, uh, USC, what Lincoln Riley brings to the table. Even we'll see how their defense gets, but I think it's going to be hard for Michigan State to get back to that D'Antonio level. I think it's going to be hard. Mel Tucker had his little splash in the pan with the transfers, really Kenneth Walker, but I think it's going to be hard for them to get back to that level. Like have they might have a decent year, but it's going to be hard for them to get 10 wins. I think a lot of the time, most years, I don't think. I think Michigan State's going to go back to being that little brother, like Michigan likes to call them. I think they're going to stay around there.
Really
Yeah,
interesting.
that could be the Michigan in me, the Michigan Wolverine in me, but I don't. I just don't think that they're going to get back to that level of being like, okay, we can win the Big Ten, dominate the Big Ten. I don't. I don't. I think it's going to take longer than a couple years at least if they do get back to that.
Yeah, yeah. That I think is that's a good statement. Good quality analysis, at least on the part of it'll take him some time. There's no doubt about
Yeah.
that. I ashamedly so, or accidentally so, did buy in a little bit to Mel Tucker, but I've never been like this bought in as compared to Jonathan Smith. Like A+ hire. I look at Mike McDonald, his strength and conditioning coach, who's made Oregon State one of the most physical teams in the then Pac-12. Good
Yeah.
defense, good punishing offense and ground game. I think Michigan State's biggest question is honestly their recruiting. If they can
Exactly.
get recruiting solved out, if they can get that solved, I think that they could be up there. Like they could be in tier 1 if they get it solved. And it's because I think I made a tweet about this that some have asked me about. And I'm not giving an answer cleverly because I want to like back it up. I actually think that I'm just going to say it. I think they have the best staff in the Big Ten. Looking at
Really?
position coaches, OC, DC, strength and conditioning coach, head coach, and averaging all of that out and giving what I think is its proper weight. I think they have the best staff. But that's more from a developmental and coaching angle. They got to recruit. That's where they're the most unproven. And recruiting's not the end-all be-all. But if you want to get to like D'Antonio and be more consistent or be better than that, you have to recruit at a consistent, I would say at least top 20 level, which Michigan State can do. But it's going to be hard. I think they're a future contender in my
You
mind.
think so? How many years do you think it'll take them?
This year, obviously not. Next year, the tricky thing is my time frame. Would probably give like 4 years, like where all the roster's basically his at this point. And the only reason I say that is because their schedule every year is tough. Like the minute they get a little bit of a break in non-conference in conference play in maybe 26, depending on how things are panned out, they play Notre Dame non-conference. Like their schedule will be tough every year. It doesn't look like for now they'll have a Rutgers or Iowa type schedule where you get some sizable built-in wins. So I don't have like an exact year where I think, oh, well, they're back. But I think it'll be within the next half decade. I think you'll see them have a pretty big breakout year. Up
And
next,
it's funny. Hold on, real quick. It's funny that you say that because I feel like when you're trying to rebuild a program, you don't need to play those crazy out of conference games. Like you really do need those schedules like Rutgers has this year, so you can build it up and okay, I got something going. I might actually accomplish something and have a great record. I think you need that.
yeah, it helps to build up the record, to get recruits to see the wins and losses, all that good stuff. For Wisconsin, I'm a believer in Fickle. My issue, I think, with Wisconsin, I think mainly revolves around the fact that I don't know. I think it's more challenging to recruit there than in most of the former Big Ten East schools. And I love Fickle as a head coach and what he's done, but some of their hires, like whether it's Alex Grinch as the safeties coach or even Phil Longo as the OC, it kind of makes my head scratch a bit. Do you think this team's a future contender? Like for the Big Ten, we're not talking national title because that's hefty for any program.
I don't think consistently. I think it'll be similar to how it was before, where you're every 4 years or every 2 or 3 years they get a team with a lot of juniors and seniors, and then there's something serious.
Okay.
I think it'll be like that still.
So you think it'll be like Paul Christ, but without the teetering off at the end?
Yeah, yeah. Like when they have a team full of those juniors and seniors, they're gonna give it to you. So I think it'll be like that with Wisconsin. I think they get back to how they were, honestly.
Yeah, I all I'll say in regards to that is I think I may have already been on record saying this, and if so, maybe I regret it. I do think under Fickle, because of the coach he is, I'd be willing to say they'll probably win the Big Ten in his tenure there at least like once.
Hmm.
But beyond that, I don't know. Contender, yeah, consistently. I'm actually not as confident as I am with Michigan State, mainly because of the staff. But that's my own thing. We'll see if that ages well or not. All I'll say about Michigan State, the last thing I will is before Sharon Moore won Michigan the games he did, and then I'm like, he deserves the job and he'll be really good. I wanted Michigan to hire Kalen DeBoer or Jonathan Smith if Harbaugh left after 23. So I've
Okay,
been high on them since that really, I would say 2022 season with Smith on the
got you,
staff. Now we
got you.
got Nebraska. Nebraska, I actually have a timetable for when I think they're going to be legitimate contenders.
I don't. I'm not buying Nebraska. I'm not buying them. I'm not buying it. I want to try to think of a way. It's just been too long for me to buy into them. You know.
Plus, plus they underachieved last year. I mean, they really should have went 7-5 or 8-4, and
No,
they fell apart.
exactly. So I have to see them, and I just don't see it. I don't see it getting to where they'll be consistently good in the Big Ten. I think they're another team that if they have a lot of seniors, they might give you a headache. But besides that, I think they'll be a team that's mediocre, underachieves a lot of the times, like you said. So I'm not buying into them.
I think next year they're going to be like not elite, but they're going to be like 2000. They're going to be a 2019, let's just say that, like level Wisconsin team. They're going to be dangerous. And if
Hmm.
things go their way, they could.
One of those headaches.
Yep. Oh yeah,
One of
like
those headache teams.
not Ohio State, maybe not Oregon or Michigan or Penn State, but they'll be like right behind him and closer than I think some people will expect. Because Raiola will be in his sophomore season, and they're a young team too, so they'll have much more experience. And I don't know if they'll be able to retain Tony White because he wants a head coaching job and he's an elite DC, but his system will be installed there by then. So, like, I think in 2025, Nebraska can be a really, really good team. And if things bounce their way, absolutely they're Big Ten contenders that year. But I get where you're coming from in all of that. We got, finally, this is last but not least, the Trojans, USC. Do you think they'll contend with Riley? Can they? Like,
That's a good question. I think I give them a little more. I have a little more faith in them than most teams because he finally changed the D coordinator. So that's a plus. It's similar to Harbaugh keeping Don Brown for so long. I'll give you the plus for that. That's a step in the right direction. Now his offense, the question is with him was will you play more complementary football, trying to sling it all over the yard so much, you're not helping your defense out doing that. You know what I'm saying? So, but I think he might be able to get it going at USC, but it's gonna be, can he get it going and keep his job? That's, to me, that's the question. Can you get
Yeah.
it going and have an elite season in these? I'll say 3 years, in these next
Yes.
3 years.
Yes. Thank you for saying that. I don't think he's getting fired this year. Like, even if they miss a bowl game. And
No,
if you want to tell me, oh, well, no, no. They kept Clay Helton around after he went 5-7 and had and that was like Pac-12 wide open. They'll, with a transition year like this, and they return about as much production as Michigan does from a team that would have lost to 30 points by Michigan last year, they would be dumb to get rid of him unless they
yeah,
went like 2-10 or 3-9. That would be
yeah,
like, I think with the staff, I think the staff he's put together is actually one of the best defensively in the Big Ten. With bringing in the Ravens system, hiring Doug Belk, Eric Henderson, North Dakota State's head coach, to be the linebackers coach, not even a coordinator. My question for them is strength and conditioning. It is for this, that's for long term. For this year, it's just all that they've lost on
yeah.
offense and the fact their defense has to be fixed. But I think USC is a team like Nebraska in the way that next year, if they play their cards right, I think next year they'll be a pretty good team.
Yeah. This year is more rebuild and setting the foundation for 2025.
Yeah, that's what I think. And that's what worries me, because if I think USC is going to be really good, perhaps top 15, top 10 good next year, they probably should be better than what I'm projecting them to be this year. I mean, I have them power rated top 30, but I think their schedule is just so tough, and all the Big Ten teams they play, like, most of them can run the ball and have good D lines. They match up well with USC in addition to being close to them.
Yeah.
But I think if they just recruit, because they've been recruiting top 20, top 15, and additionally with the portal, it's probably close to top 10.
Yeah.
If they just keep doing that, and the defensive staff pans out, and it should, and Riley just keeps pumping out quarterbacks and wide receivers,
Exactly.
they, you know, the elite strength and conditioning that I think they lack, unless they want to win the Big Ten every other year, that may not even be an issue, honestly. Like, just with the receivers, the offense, and then a defense that's well schemed and tactical, it'd be a deal breaker. Like, if
Yeah. Riley's got he's got enough to, all he has to do is tweak where he's lacking at,
yes,
and he could have them where they're tough, and you're gonna hate to see them on the schedule.
yeah. I mean, if every one of his teams just had a top 25 defense, not even
Yeah,
better than
pretty
that,
much just defense.
yeah, then they're 2022 Ohio State every single year, and he probably has a playoff win, or
Yeah,
maybe even a national title. Like, that's
exactly.
all it takes. And with the staff he's assembled, if they get good recruiting and time, they'll probably be better than top 25 defensively.
You would think. You would think. It's just going to be trying to get down this. How fast can they get that system down? And do you have the players to really run it how it needs to be ran?
Yeah, yeah, and I don't think they do this year, but
Me neither.
that's just my opinion. Next year, you get more development, you get your recruits in. I mean, and I've been consistent with that. I mean, that was my whole thing with Jim Knowles. Like, yeah, good hiring, the defense will improve, but it's not going to be top 10 in year one, because they kind of wrecked it for 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
And that's me with USC, except they wrecked it even worse for 2 years in a row. And before that, because Clay Helton wasn't any good. So
Yeah.
this year, it'll probably be a top 75 unit, maybe higher if they can work a miracle. Next year, it should probably be top 25. And if Riley is here beyond that, they should be much better. But
Definitely.
yeah. Well, thank you for coming on. I enjoyed this episode number 13 of Touchdown Talk, and I should have you on again to talk about some Michigan game or so, because there's plenty of ones that'll be big.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I appreciate you having me, Sam. It was definitely a good experience.
Yeah, well, I'll have you back on again, and thank you for coming on. It was good seeing what you added and all that you brought to the show. Yeah, everyone. Okay. Well, thank you for tuning in to Touchdown Talk episode 13. Make sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, check out Johnny Olden Jr.'s channel, and last but not least, I will be going live Sundays, Mondays, and Wednesdays for sure at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's the schedule for this regular season, and I'll always let you know what it is going to be for this upcoming preseason as well for 2025. But